This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
I'm Roby Brock. Welcome to the program. We are glad to have you with us. Governor Asa Hutchinson is a bit boxed in with his political options, but he is about to raise his national profile in a major way. I'm joined now by Capitol correspondent for the Associated Press, Andrew DeMillo. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah,
in person.
Yeah, I know. This is the first time I've done this in a while.
Well, we could have Zoomed it if you wanted to, but it's a lot more fun to, engage.
I need to get out of the house.
Governor Asa, you've written a major piece that was national about a week ago. Governor Asa Hutchinson's rhetoric is very anti-Trumpian at times, but at the same time, he does wade into the Trump base of the Republican Party. I guess my question to you is, what kind of Republican is Asa Hutchinson that you've discovered from your analysis piece?
The description he's used is pragmatic conservatism, and it's kind of goes back to past 30 or 40 years that he's been with the party here, where some of his politics in a lot of ways are not that different from Trump, but he has been very cautious about some of Trump's rhetoric and some of his policies, and like we talked about, a lot of the attention he's been getting this year nationally has been for distancing himself from not just Trump, but also kind of Arkansas's Trumpian turn is kind of the description that we used.
It's a different style, is what it is. There may be some similar politics, but the style is a little bit different.
Yeah.
He has critics and supporters. In the piece that you did, Senator Trent Garner, state senator from El Dorado, calls him a relic. GOP strategist Whit Ayers calls him refreshing. Do you get the sense that Governor Hutchinson is decisively trying to determine what path he is, or do you think he's kind of feeling his way through this?
I think in a lot of ways he's, at least unintentionally trying to feel his way through this, and I think, looking at next year's election, may get kind of a better idea of kind of how does he fit in with the party, not just in Arkansas, but nationally. He's starting a political action committee. He's taking on a national role, chairing the National Governors Association. And in a lot of ways, if we see his message kind of resonate with people, that may give us an idea of kind of what path does he have forward, because he's made it clear he's not ruling out something else in his future. But I think if we look at the midterm elections next year and we see there not really being room for kind of his brand of conservatism, and the only litmus test really being the Trump test, that may kind of determine that there may not be a path forward for him, at least in terms on the national stage.
You referenced he's about to become the chairman of the National Governors Association, a very prestigious and high-profile post. It will increase his visibility that has already been pretty visible on a lot of national programs here. And he's a popular draw because he doesn't always say the predictable things, I think, in that respect right there. What's your expectation for how he might conduct his business in this NGA role?
Yeah, I think based on the way he's talking about a lot of things right now, he seems more apt to be talking about kind of dry policy issues than kind of identity politics type things. One thing he's talked about that he wants to focus on is his computer science in public schools, which is not kind of headline grabbing kind of thing. It's not
super sexy,
yeah,
but it can be to some extent. I mean, but yeah.
And I think healthcare is another issue, especially with Arkansas, putting in another waiver for its Medicaid expansion. I think that's an area we're going to see him talking about things. So a lot of the areas that you see kind of Trump grabbing attention, and kind of these other red state governors, Ron DeSantis, Kristi Noem, who are kind of trying to carve out a path kind of similar to Trump, kind of branding themselves in the same way. I don't think you're going to see the same thing with him. And also with COVID, he's dealing with an increasingly just ominous situation here. I think you're going to see him talking more about the challenges of dealing with low vaccination rate and dealing with rising cases in very conservative state where there's a lot of vaccine resistance right now.
Where do you think Governor Hutchinson goes politically? He's term limited. he doesn't seem to be like he's going to step into that U.S. Senate race unless something dramatic changes there. I mean, is he eyeing a presidential run, you think, in 2024?
He's very coy about it when he's asked about it. Even I think on CNN he was asked about it again yesterday. But he's kind of in a different position from what we've seen past two governors. Governor Beebe made it very clear he was not running for office again. Governor Huckabee, made no bones about it that he was interested in something on the national stage and had book out and had visits to early states. You don't see that with Hutchinson, but he also makes it clear that he's open to something. I think, kind of like I said, I think next year may really determine that in terms of what path is there forward for him.
Where is there a lane for
exactly.
him? So we've seen this in Arkansas politics over several cycles where we've had governors for long periods of time. Post-Clinton, there was this, a bit of a change in Arkansas politics. Post-Huckabee, there's a change in politics. Post-Beebe, there's a change in politics. What's your expectation for 2022 and maybe a little bit beyond for what we will see post-Asa Hutchinson?
It's hard to tell, and that's one of the things. Whit Ayers, when we talked to him, kind of made the point that the path forward for the Republican Party is very much an open question. It may be less so for Arkansas, at least, because this is one of the more Trump-friendly states, and I think you're going to see a lot more candidates kind of going in that lane. And the things that have hurt Trump nationally are not hurting him in Arkansas, or at least not hurting that brand here. So I think for Republicans, I think you're going to see a lot more of that. Kind of the question is, is there does Hutchinson have the same impact? At least on the state level, he has previously, but does that stamp of approval help with candidates here, help with issues here? So I think next year is going to determine a lot of that.
Lots of players to watch in 2022. I'm going to name a few here that you and I will be covering plenty of. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Leslie Rutledge, Tim Griffin, Chris Jones has kind of pounced on the scene, Tom Cotton, John Bozeman, lots of others to watch in this, a lot of different races, particularly the governor and the U.S. Senate race there. Which candidate or campaign holds the most intrigue to you? I know it's a little bit like picking your favorite child, but I mean, what kind of dynamics do you kind of see at work that you're particularly interested in focusing on?
I think the governor's race as a whole, there are a lot of dynamics there that are really interesting. I think with Sarah Sanders, the big question is going to be, when or if does she start drilling down to some of these state issues and some of these state policy proposals that we've seen in the past governor's races defined by. Or is this going to be a race that's purely going to be defined by national issues? The other part of that dynamic on the Republican side is with Attorney General Rutledge. What path does she see forward in a primary that really is overshadowed right now? Is there some path she sees forward, or is there, if not, what's the exit strategy? What is she? Does she look at some other race? Does she bide her time? So that dynamic's really interesting to me. On the Democratic side, the whole thing with Chris Jones is really interesting to me, where you've got a lot of national interest and a lot of national money on a race that you would really expect national Democrats to write off. And it's hard to see how this race is not a really difficult, if not long shot race for Democrats. But does that national money, does that help him overcome that in some way? We've already seen fundraising, it has helped him. And is this just because of the candidate, or is this because this is Democrats really wanting to have a strong candidate against Sarah Sanders? And also, does this give Democrats kind of a path moving forward for exciting voters here? Having someone with a really good backstory, really interesting backstory, and covers really interesting video that gets really viral. Does this kind of provide at least a model for them going forward?
At least for me right now, I'm more interested in watching the primaries than the general election, because you've got 4 Democrats running in that Democratic primary: Sufa Mays, Anthony Bland, and Russ Russell also joining Chris Jones in that race. The Sarah Sanders, Leslie Rutledge dynamic is an interesting one. And then the Senate race, I mean, you got a couple of Democrats running now, and you've got John Bozeman with technically, I guess, 3 Republican challengers there. there's going to be a lot of action next May for us to cover, and in between now and then.
Yeah, and I've told people it's not as bad as 2010. The Republican Senate primary, I think, had 7 or 8 candidates, and
There were like 11 or 12 at one time.
yeah,
so,
like whenever we'd write a story about it, half the story was just listing the candidate. So it hasn't gotten to that point, but it is really interesting where you're seeing just these jam-packed primaries on both sides. With Republicans, it's just because you've got so many Republicans now. And where do they go? But also a lot of Democrats who you didn't really know were on the bench, coming off the bench into these races.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. All right, he's Andrew DeMillo with the Associated Press. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
All right, we're back with more right after this.